Okay, I'm going to talk to you about the fall and then the subsequent rise of UK manufacturing, why I think that is happening, and where I see that going in the future. So first I'm going to take you back 25 years. That's me in 1991. Apparently patchwork race were all the rage back in those days. I set up a business when I finished fashion college, making recycled clothing. We made everything ourselves in our own studio in London. UK manufacturing wasn't in its heyday, but it was pretty commonplace still. And making everything here and setting up a brand and making it yourself was kind of the done thing, really. But that was really the start of the decline, the rapid decline of UK textile manufacturing. This chart here shows you the dotted line is where we were in 1991. And you can see the blue line is manufacturing in general for UK manufacturing, and the red line is what happened to textiles. So it was pretty rapid after 1991. And everyone thought that we would never really make anything here again, and no one really wanted a made in UK label. When it came to 2011, after I had my business, that folded after a few years. I was a bad business person. So I went to work for various big brands on the UK high street: Burberry, Marks and Spencer's, Levi's, Debenhams. And gradually, over the 20 years that I did that as a designer and then a buyer, I saw all of the production from the UK start going overseas until there was nothing really left in the UK anymore. So in 2011, I set up a website called Make It British to try and promote UK manufacturing and brands that were made in the UK. Everyone thought I was completely bonkers. No one wants to buy anything made in the UK again. Nothing is actually made here anymore. But then in 2012, a couple of events happened that changed the way that people looked at buying British and a made in Britain label. Firstly, we had the Queen's Jubilee, and then we had the London Olympics in 2012. And this created a renewed interest in buying British. There was Union Jack flags everywhere, and suddenly everyone was talking about buying British and made in the UK. I actually did a survey as part of Make It British at the very beginning of 2013 to find out what this demand was. Was it just all smoke and mirrors and waving British flags around, or were people actually wanting to buy British again? And I actually found that people not only wanted to buy British, but they were willing to pay more. In fact, 43% of people that I surveyed said that they would actually pay more for something if it had a Made in Britain label on it. That was backed up by some research that the Centre for Economics and Business Research and Barclays did of over 7,500 people across 8 different countries all over the world, that said that people would on average pay up to 8% more for a product made in the UK. One of the reasons for that is that they believe that British-made products were better quality. In fact, 50% of people that they surveyed said that they thought product with a Made in Britain label was of good or excellent quality. And when they actually looked at developing countries such as China, 4 out of 5 of those said that they thought the product with the Made in Britain label was of good quality, and that's why they were interested in buying it. So at this point, more retailers, even those that traditionally quite famously gone overseas for their production, started thinking, hang on a minute, should we be making more in the UK again? Marks and Spencer was one such example. They set up their Vista British label in 2013. All the fabrics and the components for the garments and the accessories across men's and women's wear for this collection were sourced from the UK. The customer were more interested in buying this sort of product. But then, not shortly after that, something happened which changed the way that people the world over looked at garment production. On the 24th of April 2013, I'm sure you all know about the terrible accident that happened in the Rana Plaza factory in Bangladesh when it collapsed, killing 1,130 garment workers. The owners of the building knew that there was a problem, but they still insisted on the workers going into work that day to finish production that they were making for big brands, some well-known big brands. And obviously this was a terribly tragic accident. That led to people starting to think, actually, who made my clothes? What's in the garment supply chain if this sort of thing can happen and people can work in this sort of dangerous place? The Fashion Revolution campaign was set up shortly after, which actually tried to push people to think who made my clothes and encourage people to think about the provenance of what they're wearing. Several UK manufacturers have since been involved in this and are shouting about the provenance of the product they're making. It's this sort of storytelling and provenance that's also helped to grow the Made in Britain label. There's a lot of brands now who are talking and shouting about what they're making and where they're making it. A good example of this is a menswear brand called SCH Kelly. On their website, in beautifully shot photographs, they detail every part of their supply chain, where they're getting it from and who's making it. This is starting to make the customer think more about who's actually making a product. Another great example is a bag company called Churchby. They use British wool that is spun, woven and finished in the UK, and they shout about this both on their website and on the product. In fact, as you can see here, it's mentioned not once but twice that the product is British made on the labels on the outside of the product, and also the provenance of the fabric that they're using. This storytelling, provenance and quality is also, and the fact that you can buy things that will last longer is now being shouted out about quite a lot. There's a website even that's set up called Made to Last that actually gives you a guarantee on British made products that are way beyond the standard 1 or 2 years that you'd expect things to last. All of the storytelling has now also enabled UK factories to start reaching customers where they'd never been able to before. So back in 1991, you wouldn't really have heard of factories selling direct to the customer. But now we're seeing the rise of what I call the factory brand. So for instance, Private White, they used to just make contract clothing for companies like Marks and Spencer, but a few years ago they set up their own menswear brand. This allowed them to reach their customers directly, talk about the factory that was making the product, and cut out the middleman that would traditionally be taking the profits, and allow made in Britain product to be more affordable to the consumer. So giving people a better quality product for a lower price. Not only are we seeing factories setting up brands, we're now seeing again brands setting up their own factories, just like I did back in 1991. Love these two. They're called Kelly and Scott. They're a husband and wife team. They have their own label called Dawson Denim. They make everything themselves in their workshop in Brighton, and they are the brand. They wear the brand, they make the brand, and they export it all over the world. They're particularly popular in Japan. They found that this storytelling about their product and the fact they make it themselves is of utmost importance to their customers. At this point, I should probably talk about another reason that UK-made brands have managed to rise to provenance is that there's more routes to market for a lot of these brands. So for instance, online marketplaces like Folksy and Etsy, which a lot of small makers are using to sell directly to their customers, have really helped those makers get out there and tell their story. This sort of thing never existed when I had my business in 1991. Unless you had your own shop or sold on a market, there was no way for you to go out there and reach your customers. But now that we have the internet, there's brands like this and small makers that are actually sort of creating the march of the makers that we're hearing about. Another way that they're all reaching new customers is by things like Kickstarter and other crowdfunding platforms. This is a particularly interesting case. It's a factory called Cookson & Clegg, you may know, it's in Blackburn, not far from here. And they actually set up their own brand and used Kickstarter to fund that. And as part of their advertising they did on Kickstarter, they told the reason why they were setting up this brand. And part of that is because fashion is quite a seasonal thing to produce. So to keep a garment factory in work all the year round, it doesn't really work with the seasonality of fashion. One of the main issues with garment factories in the UK is that they're usually teams of pretty small staff. The average, apparently 9 out of 10 UK garment manufacturers employ less than 10 people. So keeping those people busy is all important. So by setting up your own brand, you're able to fill that downtime, and that's what Cookson and Clegg have done here. And we should also talk about mass customisation and how that has helped actually making locally. You couldn't, with the customer demanding more personalised product, you couldn't do that if you were manufacturing overseas. That's the sort of thing that you need to do locally to be able to ship it out quickly. This is an example. It's a company called Unmade. They are recent graduates of the Royal College, and they've invented a piece of software that allows them to program knitting machines that traditionally would only be used for mass manufacturing because of the length of the technical setup of the machines. But they've invented a piece of software that will actually program the machine and allow it to produce individual garments actually right there in the shop. So that really is the factory of the future. The customer going in, designing something themselves and watching it being made within a short space of time. They're walking out with something that was made there and then. That is local production for you. So do I see UK manufacturing growing? Obviously I do. A recent survey by the UKFT showed that in the last 5 years, there's been a 9% increase in garment manufacturers in the UK. And this is what's happening now to the exports of UK fashion and textile manufacturing. As you can see, there's been a great increase in the last few years. That's from 2001 to 2014 on that chart there. As actually also is a £100 million rise. It's still a drop in the ocean. We're not back where we were from 1991, but things are definitely going in the right direction. I also did a survey of 110 UK textile and garment manufacturers that I know recently, and 58% of them said that they were doing better, the business was better than it was 5 years ago, and only 20% said that it was worse. So it's great. There's a great future for UK manufacturing. Oh, we've got a dodgy screen there. So do I see, what do I see the future holding for UK manufacturing? It's definitely on the up. I think that's mainly driven, as I've shown here, by an renewed interest in the provenance of our products, by new routes to market, and by technical innovations. Thank you.